Hello, good afternoon. 6 people have died and a 7th is in a critical condition after a car crash in central Birmingham. 6 vehicles were involved in the collision, which happened just after 1 o'clock in the morning at an entrance to an underpass just south of the city centre. 4 others needed hospital treatment. Police have described the scene as very difficult and upsetting. Our correspondent Tom Burridge has this report.
Horrific and upsetting is how the emergency services described the scene here. This black taxi flipped onto its side. The driver and a couple on board all died. Next to it, the mangled remains of another car. Police are now investigating how these vehicles collided with such force, killing many of those on board.
Clearly a very difficult scene for our staff to deal with, to have so many casualties all at the same time, 13 people having to be seen in rapid time. Clearly the first job is to find out who's most seriously injured. That was established very quickly.
4 men travelling in one of the cars were all thrown out of their vehicle. 3 of them died at the scene. The 4th man is in a critical condition in hospital. But a man and a woman travelling in a 3rd car, which was badly damaged, survived with relatively minor injuries. This photo shows the aftermath, as those first to arrive try and save lives. A devastating scene with debris strewn all over the road. The crash happened on a section of the Belgrave Middleway, a busy road in the heart of Birmingham. The vehicles collided before the entrance to the underpass at the junction of Bristol Road. Police say the dual carriageway will probably stay closed for the rest of today. 3 other cars were also involved in what ambulance crews called an extremely distressing and complex crash scene. Tragedy on one of Birmingham's main roads a week before Christmas. Tom Burridge, BBC News.
Well, let's go to our correspondent Phil Mackey, who's at the scene for us now. And Phil, the police have just been holding a news conference to give more details about what happened.
Yeah, they've been talking about the harrowing nature of what they've had to deal with since the early hours of this morning. Remember, this happened at about 1:10 this morning. If you can see behind me, you can see the underpass that Tom was referring to in his report there. And the cars on the left were those that were largely avoided serious injury. They seem to have collided, trying to avoid the crash ahead of them. On the right-hand side, behind that police van, is where the taxi, in which 3 people were killed, is lying on its side. And between it and the wall, there is another vehicle that was completely crushed. That's the one that Tom referred to, saying that the man and the woman who were driving in that astonishingly managed to escape with relatively minor injuries. Beyond that, further along the underpass is where the other vehicle that was involved in the most serious part of this accident is lying at the moment. Lots of activity this morning. Forensic officers, specialist teams have been inspecting the scene, and I've been talking to people who live here. You can see that there are flats overlooking this scene. Some people heard the crash, went out, saw what happened last night. One thing that they've all said is that this is a particularly busy stretch of the road, even late at night, and a lot of people do speed along here. That's almost certainly going to be a focus of that investigation. For the time being, though, obviously the police and everyone's thoughts are with the families of those people who've died.
OK, Phil, thank you very much indeed. Phil Mackey there for us in Birmingham. Every worker who's 18 or over could be automatically enrolled in a workplace pension unless they opt out, under plans unveiled by the government today. At the moment, employers have to provide pensions for all staff aged 22 or over and earning more than £10,000. Well, the move's expected to affect around 900,000 people, as Joe Lynham reports.
Ollie and Nate are both 21. Ollie, on the left, has not yet started saving for his retirement.
It's not really crossed my mind yet. I've moved jobs quite frequently, tend not to stay in one place too long, so pensions have always sort of been lower down the list of things I've been sort of conscious of.
Nate, though, has been saving for his retirement since he was 16.
I grew up with a family on welfare, so I was quite aware of the effects that being reliant on government money can have, and how insecure it can be sometimes.
If the Work and Pension Secretary David Gauke has his way, young people like Ollie and Nate could soon be automatically enrolled for a pension at their employers.
That, I think, will get more people into the habit of saving. It will mean that younger people will be saving for those extra years, so that obviously is significant when it comes to their retirement.
At the moment, only those aged over 22 are automatically included in a pension scheme by their employers. But the government wants that age lowered to 18. Soon, 8% of our salaries will be going into a pension pot, something that employers are worried about.
I think what the government needs to bear in mind, however, is how much of the cost of that is going to be falling on employers in the future, because already the cost for employers is on course to treble by 2019. Today's announcement means that the cost for employers is going to be even higher than that.
To 18 or even 21-year-olds, retirement must seem a very long way off, especially if they don't earn much. But if this plan proceeds, it could help prevent younger people depending on the state in decades to come. Joe Lynham, BBC News.
The Prime Minister says developments over the last 10 days have marked a watershed in the UK's departure from the EU. Writing in 2 newspapers today, Theresa May said the government is proving the doubters wrong after the EU agreed to move on to the next phase of negotiations. But Labour says the government's Brexit plans are a mess. Well, our political correspondent Jonathan Blake is here with me now. Jonathan, all this comes ahead of a big discussion this week in Cabinet.
Yes, the timing is important here because Cabinet, as you say, will meet this week to discuss for the first time in full, really, what the UK's future relationship with the European Union will be. But the Prime Minister is striking a defiant tone in her piece in the Sunday Telegraph and Sunday Express this morning. Some stirring words for those enthusiastic about Brexit. The familiar phrases are in there: taking back control, getting on with the job. She's looking ahead to the next phase of negotiations, which she describes as the exciting part. 2 reminders, though, if they were needed today, that this will not be an easy ride. Both at home in Westminster, 2 Conservative peers writing in The Observer that the Lords won't stand for vigorous whipping or a restrictive timetable when it comes to getting the EU withdrawal bill through Parliament. And then the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, in an interview with the Sunday Times, saying that Britain should not simply mirror Brussels regulations in future because it will end up being a vassal state to the EU. Others in Cabinet take a slightly different view. They'll have to agree this week if the Prime Minister can deliver her promise that she won't be derailed in delivering Brexit.
All right, Jonathan, thank you very much indeed. Cricket now, and England's battle to save the Ashes will go into the final day of the 3rd Test in Perth after rain brought an early end to play. But it looks like a tough task. Needing at least a draw, England are still 127 runs short of Australia's first innings total with 4 wickets down. Here's Andy Swiss.
A day when English cricket was rescued by some very English weather, but for how long? It had started out a damage limitation exercise to restrict Australia's gargantuan total. The video umpire helped, finally dislodging Steve Smith for a mere 239. But some hefty late order hitting took Australia's total way out of sight. For England's batsmen, it was now all about survival. Oh dear. Josh Hazlewood's brilliance did for Alistair Cook, and worse was to follow. Joe Root, the captain, remember? What was he thinking? But as his teammates fell around him, James Vince stood tall, a fluent 50 starting a recovery. Until the ball of this, or perhaps any summer. Mitchell Starc, the stump destroyer, just watch this zigzag off the pitch at 90 miles an hour, unplayable. David Milan and Johnny Bairstow helped calm the nerves with an unbeaten partnership until a deluge sparked delight among the Barmy Army. But their team needs something very special.
Got 2 guys at the crease that spent a lot of time there in the first innings. It's slightly different conditions, but yeah, we've got to have belief that we can stay in the series and get over the line tomorrow.
So England are still hanging on. More rain is forecast for tomorrow. They'll need that and some determined batting to have any chance of saving their Ashes hopes. Andy Swiss, BBC News, Perth.
Prince Harry has interviewed Barack Obama for BBC Radio 4's Today programme.
If you start using long pauses between the answers, you're probably going to get right. Instead of the face. Oh, let me see the face. Oh, okay.
The interview is part of Harry's guest editorship of the Today programme and features the former US president sharing his memories of the day he left office and his hopes for his post-presidential life. OK, you can see more on all of today's stories on the BBC News channel. The next news on BBC One is at 5:20. Goodbye for now.